Mail-in elections. I know we've already seen significant changes to our elections process here in Montana ahead of the June 2nd primary. But there have been attempts, even in the middle of the coronavirus relief package debates on Capitol Hill, there have been attempts to basically nationalize these elections and order a national mail-in election. Well, our Heritage Foundation policy expert joining us on the show says that the potential for fraud is why mail-in elections should be a dead letter. Hans von Spakovsky now with us. Hans, great to have you back on the show.
Aaron, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so here in Montana, a lot of people already do absentee ballot voting. Vote by some counties. It's a majority of voters. But for our June 2nd primary, they've basically already made the decision where every county is going to move to largely a mail-in ballot. They are going to let people vote at the county elections offices if they simply want to vote in person. But other than that, it's a mail-in election. Frankly, what's your concern with these attempts to federalize, to nationalize mail-in elections?
Well, there's no reason for the federal government to get into this, particularly not Congress, because every state already, including Montana, they've already got all the laws and rules and regulations in place to handle this. You can vote by absentee ballot in every single state. The only reason that for the feds to come into this, all you have to do is look at the House bill that Nancy Pelosi tried to push through on the coronavirus. What it essentially did was ban all of the standard kind of security measures that states have in place when it comes to handling absentee ballots. And look, nobody disputes we need absentee ballots, particularly for people who live in remote locations or are sick or disabled, can't get to polling places. But there are security precautions in place. And I just give you a couple examples of bad things that the Nancy Pelosi's bill would have done that would have made it easier to cheat and easier to manipulate election results. I mean, for example, look, what every state says is, look, your absentee ballot, we can get it in the mail after Election Day as long as it was postmarked by the end of Election Day. And the reason for that is you don't want people waiting until after Election Day when they start seeing the results before they vote, because that gives you the ability to manipulate election results. Nancy Pelosi's bill would have required every state to accept absentee ballots, not that are postmarked by Election Day, but that are signed by the end of Election Day. Well, Aaron, you know the problem with that. How in the world are you going to be able to verify that the voter actually signed it by the end of Election Day, but instead didn't wait until after Election Day to do that? With an official U.S. postmark, you know they did it. Another change she would have made, and again, this shows how dangerous the feds coming in is, look, the way states count absentee ballots is the absentee ballots are counted at the same time as the ballots that have been cast in person on Election Day. In other words, they wait till the election is over. Then they start tabulating and counting them. Nancy Pelosi's bill would have required states to start doing that 2 weeks before Election Day. Now, think about what would happen if they start counting the ballots 2 weeks before Election Day and that information is leaked out. If it's leaked out to the public, people might be deterred from voting. They see that the candidate they favor is losing. Well, why should I go vote? If it's leaked selectively to candidates, a losing candidate might say, oh, okay, I can now use this information. We still got 2 weeks to go to change the results of the election. It gives you the ability to potentially manipulate election results. Why in the world would Nancy Pelosi think this is something that's needed to handle the coronavirus problem? It's not. It's a way to make it easier to manipulate election results.
Yeah, and this is outrageous on a couple of fronts. It's outrageous because of the changes that they actually want to make to our elections to begin with, and then mandate it nationwide. But But then on top of that, it's outrageous given the fact that she was trying to do this with an emergency coronavirus relief package. Well, people are being hurt. People are out of work. People are not able to pay their bills. They're probably going to – there's some businesses that may never reopen following this shutdown. And she's abusing what needed to be a speedy relief package process to put stuff like this into it. That's just outrageous on a number of fronts.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more with you. But as you know, a Democrat once working for Barack Obama said, "Hey, you should never let a crisis go to waste," and that's clearly what was going on here. Look, the bill that did get passed by Congress, the huge coronavirus bill, the one that came out of the Senate, it did help the states. They appropriated over $400 million, which is being given out to the states. They can use it however they feel it necessary. They're supposed to use the money to help them deal with the election, the presidential election this year, and any changes they have to make because of the coronavirus. And I don't think the states, they can use this money, but they don't need the federal government saying, "Oh, you need to change your current rules on how you handle absentee ballots and how you're going to do your election." Yeah,
and better yet, not only let the states make those decisions, but in some cases, it's also about letting individual counties make those types of decisions and those election administrators. You know, one of the problems we've had here in Montana that I know a number of Republican Secretary of State candidates are talking about on the campaign trail, or were talking about on the campaign trail before the trail closed signs went up, but they were raising concerns about same-day voter registration. You know, like, for example, at the Flathead Fairgrounds in Kalispell, Montana, on some election days, the lines have just been insane. People waiting for hours just to vote because of same-day voter registration. Well, you think about that. If we move forward with same-day voter registration in times like these, now you're going to take those same stretched out lines and add 6 feet in between each person. I mean, you're going to be running across county lines to fit those folks into line. So it seems like if desperate times are calling for desperate measures, well, maybe one of the measures could be, hey, we can't do same day registration this year.
But you wouldn't have had a choice because Nancy Pelosi's bill required every single state to allow same day registration.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So she's going the exact opposite way you. And you know what folks need to understand about, same day registration sounds very convenient, right? On election day, you can go in, register, immediately vote. But of course, the problem with that is that it gives election officials no time to verify the accuracy of the information that you have given. And if anybody thinks, oh, that can't be a problem, look, we just added a case. At the Heritage Foundation where I work, we have an election fraud database. Whenever we see a case where somebody's been convicted of voter fraud or an election's been overturned because of fraud, we add it to the database. We're up to 1,300 cases. And we just added a guy who successfully registered to vote in California, his 4 dogs and his deceased father. Now,
has he been to Butte, Montana? Has he ever been to Butte? I think I ran into him at the M&M bar last time it was open. Wow,
well, you might have. Look, he didn't do it with any malicious intent. He did it to show the vulnerability of the state's voter registration system. The only reason we know about it, and the only reason he was prosecuted, was because he called the local DA to tell him what he was doing. Election officials didn't detect it. And if he had, he got them successfully registered. Listen, if he had requested an absentee ballot, I can just about guarantee you he would have gotten 5 absentee ballots in the mail for his 4 dogs and his deceased father. He would have filled them out, signed them. They would have gone in and they would have been counted.
Wow. And basically he's a whistleblower and they're prosecuting him.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. Well, Hans von Spakovsky, great to have you on the show as always, and encourage everybody to check out the Heritage Foundation website, thedailysignal.com. They've got a great news operation as well. So thanks for being with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.